The prosecutor pulled out one of Marcus's journals. In this entry you describe cooking and consuming parts of Jessica Morrison. Can you explain that to the jury? Marcus didn't hesitate. It's the ultimate intimacy. When you consume someone, they become part of your physical body. Their cells, their essence, literally incorporated into yours. We talk about soulmates being two halves of one whole. I made that literal. I made us truly one flesh. How is that different from communion? From the religious practice of consuming the body of something you love to make it part of yourself. Because Jessica Morrison wasn't a religious symbol, the prosecutor said, her voice hard. She was a 28-year-old woman with a family who loved her, a career she was passionate about, a life she wanted to live. And you took that from her. I gave her immortality, Marcus countered. She'll live forever. Inside me. In my memories. In the parts of her I preserved. Most people die and are forgotten. Jessica never will be. None of them will be. I made sure of that. The prosecutor showed him photos of each victim. Made him look at them. Made him say their names. Did you love Jessica Morrison? Yes. Did you love Rachel Kim? Yes. Did you love Amanda Torres? Yes. I still do. If you loved them, why did you hurt them? Marcus looked frustrated, like he was trying to explain calculus to a child who couldn't understand basic math. I didn't hurt them. I transformed them. Yes, there was physical pain in the moment. But that pain was temporary. What I gave them was eternal. How is that not an act of love? The jury looked at him with expressions ranging from horror to disgust to pity. This wasn't a man who could be rehabilitated. This wasn't someone who'd made a mistake or had a moment of violence. This was someone whose entire understanding of love and connection was so fundamentally broken that he genuinely saw murder as devotion. The prosecution rested. The defense did their best to argue mental illness. And the jury went to deliberate. It took them 3 hours. 3 hours to look at all the evidence, all the testimony, all the horror that Marcus Dalton had inflicted. 3 hours to reach a verdict that felt like justice. Guilty. On all counts. 11 counts of first-degree murder. Multiple counts of kidnapping, assault, mutilation, attempted murder for Amanda Torres. When the verdict was read, Marcus Dalton showed no emotion. He just nodded slightly like the jury had confirmed something he already knew. But then Amanda Torres stood up to give her victim impact statement. And for the first time in the entire trial, Marcus Dalton showed real emotion. Amanda walked to the front of the courtroom on crutches. She'd had multiple surgeries on her foot. Would never walk normally again. The 3 toes Marcus had taken couldn't be reattached. The physical scars were permanent. But it was the psychological damage that she talked about. Before Marcus Dalton, I believed in second chances, Amanda said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. I believed that people deserved the benefit of the doubt. I believed in love, in trust, in the goodness of humanity. He didn't just take my toes. He took my ability to feel safe, to trust my own judgment. To believe that the world is a place where good people exist. She looked directly at Marcus. You say you loved me. You say you loved all of us. But you don't know what love is. Love is wanting someone to be happy, even if it's not with you. Love is respecting boundaries and autonomy. Love is seeing someone as a whole person, not a collection of parts you want to own. You don't love anyone, Marcus. You consume them. And I will spend the rest of my life learning how to trust again, learning how to love again, learning how to exist in a world where people like you are out there pretending to be normal. Her final words broke something in the courtroom. He took my toes, but he didn't take my power. I'm still here. I'm still fighting. I survived. And every day I survive is a day that proves he didn't win. Marcus Dalton, who'd shown no remorse for 11 murders, who'd described cannibalism like it was romantic, who'd sat through 3 weeks of trial with calm detachment, broke down crying. Not because he understood what he'd done. Not because he felt guilt, but because Amanda Torres had just told him she'd never trust love again. And in his twisted mind, that was the real tragedy. That he'd destroyed someone's ability to experience the thing he valued most. But I loved you, he whispered, barely audible. I really did. The judge sentenced him to 11 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. Marcus Dalton would die in prison. Would never see the outside world again. Would never touch another human being with gentleness. Would never hurt anyone again. As they led him out of the courtroom, past the families of his victims, past Amanda Torres standing strong on her crutches, past Detective Sarah Chin who'd never given up on finding him, Marcus Dalton looked back one more time. Take care of them, he said. The ones in the freezer. They're waiting for me. Tell them I'll come back for them someday. He wouldn't. He never would. But in his mind, even as they locked him in a maximum security cell, even as the door clanged shut on the rest of his life, Marcus Dalton still believed he'd preserved something beautiful. Still believed he understood love better than anyone else. Still believed he was the victim in all of this. 2 years after the trial, the world has moved on. But the people whose lives Marcus Dalton touched will never forget. Amanda Torres is 31 now. She still teaches elementary school, still works with children who adore her. But she's also become something else. An advocate for domestic violence survivors, a speaker on recognizing predatory behavior, a voice for women who didn't survive. She travels to universities across the country, telling her story to auditoriums full of college students. She teaches them about the warning signs she missed. The red flags that seemed like green lights because Marcus was so good at appearing perfect. Predators are patient, she tells her audiences. They don't rush. They build trust slowly, carefully. They make you feel safe before they show you who they really are. And by then you've already invested in them. You've already started making excuses for the things that feel wrong. She teaches self-defense classes specifically designed for women. Not just physical techniques but psychological ones. How to trust your instincts even when society tells you you're being paranoid. How to set boundaries without feeling guilty. How to recognize love bombing and manipulation and control disguised as care. Marcus took 3 of my toes, she says at the end of every speech. He took my sense of safety. He took months of my life to therapy and recovery. But he didn't take my voice. He didn't take my power. And as long as I'm still here, still fighting, still warning other women, then he failed. I survived. And survival is resistance. Detective Sarah Chin retired from the Portland Police Bureau 6 months after the trial. She'd solved the case that had consumed her for nearly 2 years. She'd brought justice for 11 families. She'd saved Amanda Torres's life. But the case had taken something from her too. She couldn't stop thinking about the women she'd failed to save. Jessica Morrison and Rachel Kim, who disappeared while Chen was building a case. The 9 women before them who died before Chen even knew Marcus Dalton existed. The what-ifs haunted her. What if she'd searched Marcus's cabin earlier? What if she'd pushed harder for a warrant? What if she'd convinced Emily Bradshaw to come forward sooner? Her wife finally convinced her that survivor's guilt was eating her alive. That she needed to channel it into something productive. So Chen wrote a book about the case. Not a sensationalized true crime thriller, but a serious examination of how serial killers operate in the modern age. How they use technology and social engineering. How they exploit trust and manipulate investigation protocols. The book became required reading in FBI training programs. Chin now teaches profiling courses, helping the next generation of detectives recognize patterns earlier. Save more lives. We can't save everyone, she tells her students. But we can learn from every failure. Every victim teaches us something about how predators operate. And that knowledge saves the next person. And the next. That's how we honor them. By making sure their deaths mean something. The families of the 11 victims finally have closure. Finally know what happened to their daughters, their sisters, their mothers. It's not the closure they wanted. They wanted their loved ones back alive. But knowing is better than the torture of uncertainty. They held a memorial service together, all 11 families. Created a scholarship fund in their victims' names. Support groups for families of murder victims. They've turned their grief into action, their loss into legacy. Emily Bradshaw, Marcus's ex-fiancée, spoke publicly for the first time at that memorial service. She'd been living in Canada, trying to forget, trying to move past the guilt of surviving when others hadn't. I knew something was wrong, she told the gathered families. I felt it. I ran. And I've spent every day since wondering if I'd spoken up sooner, if I'd gone to police with my concerns instead of just filing a restraining order and disappearing. Would your daughter still be alive? Would Marcus have been stopped before he perfected his technique? The families embraced her. Told her it wasn't her fault. That Marcus Dalton was responsible for his own actions. That she couldn't have known how far his darkness went. But Emily still carries the weight. I got away, she said. I was the one he was practicing on. Learning from. And then he took what he learned and got better at it. I survived, and that's a gift. But it's also a responsibility. To make sure other women recognize the signs I saw. To trust their instincts the way I finally trusted mine. And Marcus Dalton? He's in Oregon State Penitentiary, maximum security. Solitary confinement 23 hours a day. The 1 hour he gets in the yard, the other inmates won't go near him. Even among criminals, even among murderers and rapists and violent offenders, Marcus Dalton is reviled. They know what he did. They know about the cannibalism, the mutilation, the preserved body parts. And they've made it clear, if he ever enters general population he won't survive the night. So Marcus sits in his cell, 8 by 10 feet, with nothing but his thoughts and his delusions. He's not allowed to have photos of his victims. Not allowed to have his journals or his recordings. Everything he preserved, everything he kept, is locked in an evidence warehouse, catalogued and stored as proof of his crimes. Prison psychiatrists visit him regularly. They're fascinated by him, in the clinical way that experts are fascinated by rare pathologies. They document his continued lack of insight, his inability to understand why what he did was wrong. He still talks about his victims like they were his girlfriends, one psychiatrist noted in her report. He asks about them. Wants to know if they're being taken care of. If they miss him the way he misses them. He's created an entire delusion where they're still waiting for him. Still loving him. Still his. Marcus spends his time drawing. He's not allowed to have photos, so he draws from memory. Pictures of hands. Pictures of feet. Pictures of the women he destroyed. The guards find the drawings and confiscate them, but he just draws more. In his mind he's still the victim. Abandoned by his mother. Misunderstood by society. Punished for loving too much. He writes letters to Amanda Torres that prison officials don't send. Letters describing how much he misses her. How he thinks about her every day. How he's sorry she's afraid of love now, because love is the most beautiful thing in the world. The letters are disturbing enough that they've been entered into his psychiatric file as evidence of his continued danger to society. Marcus Dalton will never be released. Will never hurt anyone again. But inside his own mind he's still the romantic. Still the devoted boyfriend. Still the man who just wanted to make love last forever. He doesn't understand that love without consent is possession. That preservation without permission is desecration. That he's not a romantic tragic figure, but a monster who destroyed 11 lives and traumatized countless others. And he probably never will. So how does this happen? How does someone like Marcus Dalton exist in our world, looking normal, acting normal, fooling everyone around him? The psychology of serial killers with paraphilias is complex. Marcus Dalton suffered from what experts call an incorporation fantasy. The belief that by consuming or possessing parts of another person, you become one with them. This is often rooted in early childhood trauma, particularly abandonment. When Marcus's mother told 7-year-old him that he wasn't worth staying for, that even his tiny fingers and toes couldn't make her love him, she planted the seed of his pathology. Children that age take everything literally. Marcus internalized the message that love is conditional, that people leave, that the only way to prevent abandonment is to physically keep people from leaving. As he grew older, this manifested in controlling relationships. Emily Bradshaw described his obsession with her hands and feet, his need to touch and catalog and photograph them. He was trying to possess her, to own the parts of her he valued most. When she left anyway, something in Marcus snapped. He realized that live people could always leave, but preserved people couldn't. If he kept the parts he loved most, they'd be his forever. They couldn't abandon him, couldn't reject him, couldn't prove his mother right by walking away. The cannibalism aspect is even darker. By consuming their flesh, he made them literally part of his body. In his twisted logic, they would be with him always, inside him, sustaining him. It's the ultimate form of preventing abandonment, making it physically impossible for them to leave. But here's the terrifying truth. Marcus Dalton was exceptional at appearing normal. His coworkers loved him. His neighbors thought he was a great guy. Even Detective Chin, with 15 years of experience and highly tuned instincts, initially couldn't find evidence of his crimes. The most dangerous predators don't look like monsters. They don't have obvious red flags or warning signs that scream, serial killer. They look like the kind, successful, charming person you'd be proud to introduce to your parents. They volunteer at animal shelters. They remember birthdays. They cook elaborate dinners and play beautiful piano music. That's what makes them so effective. That's how they get close to victims. That's why smart, cautious women like Jessica Morrison and Rachel Kim and Amanda Torres trusted them. But there are warning signs. Subtle ones. The kind that we're trained to ignore because we don't want to seem paranoid or judgmental. Marcus was too perfect. Every woman who dated him noticed it. Almost too perfect, Rachel Kim texted her sister. That feeling of something being off, even when everything seems right, is your instincts trying to protect you. Listen to them. Marcus isolated his victims. He suggested private locations after only a few dates. Cabins in the woods. His apartment. Places where they'd be alone with him, where no one could interrupt. Healthy relationships build in public first, with gradual increases in privacy. Marcus moved frequently. New cities every few years, always with a convenient explanation. That's a pattern with serial predators. They move before patterns can be established. Before authorities can connect disappearances. Marcus had controlling behaviors that escalated slowly. Emily described how he wanted to paint her nails, trim them himself, photograph her constantly. These aren't romantic gestures. They're possession behaviors. Testing boundaries. Seeing how much control he could exert. And perhaps most importantly, Marcus made his victims feel guilty for having boundaries. He used his vulnerability as a weapon. His tragic past, his difficult breakup, his wrongful accusations. He positioned himself as the victim so that women felt bad for doubting him. These patterns exist in countless relationships. Not all of them lead to murder. But all of them are red flags of unhealthy dynamics. All of them deserve attention. Society failed Marcus Dalton's victims. Police departments didn't share information across jurisdictions. Background checks didn't flag name changes. Dating apps didn't verify identities. Friends and family saw red flags but didn't push hard enough. We can do better. We must do better. If someone in your life is dating someone who seems too perfect, don't dismiss their concerns as paranoia. Help them investigate. Support them in trusting their instincts. If you're in a new relationship and something feels wrong even though you can't explain why, trust that feeling. Your subconscious notices patterns that your conscious mind doesn't want to acknowledge. If someone you care about disappears after dating someone, push for investigation. Don't accept "she probably just left" as an answer. Jessica Morrison's friend filed a missing person report immediately. If she hadn't, who knows how much longer Marcus would have operated. And if you're a survivor, know that speaking up matters. Emily Bradshaw's testimony helped convict Marcus Bergen. Amanda Torres's advocacy is saving lives right now. Your story has power. Amanda Torres teaches self-defense now. Not just physical techniques but psychological ones. She stands in front of rooms full of women and tells them the truth. Marcus took my toes. He took my sense of safety. But he didn't take my power. I'm still here. I survived. And every day I survive is proof that predators don't win. Victims do. She's right. Marcus Bergen sits in a prison cell, his delusions intact but his freedom gone. Meanwhile, Amanda is free, thriving, making a difference, saving lives by sharing her story. That's the message of this case. Not that monsters exist, we've always known that. But that we can recognize them. We can protect each other. We can survive them. Trust your instincts. Watch for patterns. Protect each other. And if someone seems too perfect, pay attention to what's underneath. Because the most dangerous predators don't look like monsters. They look like Marcus Dalton. They look like the person you'd bring home to meet your parents. They look normal. Right up until the moment they're not. If this story has affected you, if you're thinking about the warning signs you might have missed in your own life or someone else's, then I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that bell icon. Because we tell these stories not to sensationalize tragedy, but to educate, to warn, to protect. Every person who watches this video and learns to recognize predatory behavior is a potential life saved. Every person who shares this story might reach someone who needs to hear it. Your subscription, your share, your comment might be the thing that makes someone trust their instincts instead of ignoring them. We cover cases like this every single week. Cases the news outlets won't touch. Details that get buried in official reports. The real stories of how predators operate and how we can stop them. So subscribe. Not for me. For the next Amanda Torres who might see this video and recognize the warning signs before it's too late. And here's my final question for you. If you had been in Emily Bradshaw's position, if you'd escaped Marcus Dalton and later found out he'd gone on to kill 11 women, could you forgive yourself? She did nothing wrong, but she carries that guilt every day. Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. Because survivors' guilt is real, and the people who escape often suffer just as much as those who didn't, in different ways. Remember Amanda Torres's words. He took my toes, but he didn't take my power. I'm still here. I survived. If you're a survivor of abuse, of violence, of predatory behavior, you're still here too. And that matters. Your survival matters. Your story matters. Your power matters. Stay safe out there. Trust your instincts. And never ignore that voice in your head that says something's wrong, even when everything looks perfect on the surface. Because sometimes the most beautiful facade hides the darkest truth. If you made it till the end, don't forget to subscribe.